Before the first Roman emperor ever whispered a prayer to Christ, before the British Empire was even a dream in the fog, there was a superpower in the African highlands so wealthy they minted their own gold to compete with the Caesars. If Constantine the Great wanted silk for his robes or spices for his table, the road to the east ran through Axum. Into this world of massive wealth, a young boy named Ezana was born. He inherited the throne as a child, but his ambitions were much bigger than just maintaining the status quo, and he was about to do much more than just manage a bank account. This was a king who could be as merciful as a saint and as terrifying as a hurricane. He was a ruler who didn't just win battles. He uprooted entire nations, forcing thousands into resettlement to secure his trade routes. He left behind stone monuments with a chilling warning that anyone who challenged his crown would have their name and their entire race erased from the land of the living. Today, we're going into the 4th century, where the known world rested on 3 great pillars: Rome, Persia, and the kingdom of Axum. This is the story of King Ezana, the king of the crossroads. Before we begin today's journey, it is vital to acknowledge the scholars whose work made this video possible: Dr. Stuart Monroe Hay, Dr. Rukuni, and the archives of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We stand on the shoulders of these historians to bring you the documented story of a forgotten superpower. To understand King Ezana, you have to forget everything you think you know about ancient history. Axum was one of the 4 greatest empires on Earth, the southernmost edge of the Hellenized world, and a global hub for trade between India and Rome. This was a sophisticated, prosperous economy that functioned like a modern tech hub. To service this world, Axum developed a complex coin system. Emperor Ezana was a visionary. He was the first world leader to ever replace the pagan crescent moon on currency with the Christian cross. These coins weren't just money, they were material culture that proved Axum's status as a global player. But as Ezana grew from a boy into a man, he realized that a standardized currency wasn't enough to unify his diverse, multilingual empire. Because Ezana didn't just want financial power like the kings before him. He wanted absolute power. Ezana possessed wealth that could buy the world, but he sought a power that only iron could command. To his west lay the remnants of the kingdom of Kush, but it wasn't the empire it once was. By the 4th century, 2 rival powers had merged to dominate the Nile: the Noba, a rising force of warriors, and the Kasu, the traditional royal line of Kush. These regional warlords teamed up, believing a coalition could finally check the power of Axum. They made the fatal mistake of harassing Axum's borders, thinking they could intimidate a young king. They didn't just provoke a neighbor, they invited an extinction. Ezana didn't send a diplomat, he sent an avalanche. A heavy mist clung to the Nile banks, masking the movement of 10,000 Axumite spears. As the first light broke, the mist was shattered by the glint of steel. Ezana's legions surged through the city of Meroe like a flood breaking a dam. The consequences for the coalition leaders were brutal and final. Ezana's own inscriptions record a mass execution of the Noba High Command. 6 of their kings were hunted down and killed in battle. In one engagement alone, Ezana's records tally 758 killed in a single clash. His victories were followed by the systematic seizing of thousands of cattle, sheep, and beasts of burden. But Ezana didn't just want their property, he wanted their obedience. He utilized forced resettlement as a weapon of statecraft, uprooting thousands of the Beja people to stop their banditry forever. However, sources describe Ezana as relatively just. When he resettled conquered peoples, he provided them with sustenance, clothing, and fertile land to rebuild. Even his currency reflected this. His coins bore a motto in Greek: "May this please the people." On the famous Ezana stone, the king boasted of dismantling their towns of masonry and torching their towns of grass. He ended a millennium of Kushite history in a single morning. Standing in the ruins, he carved a title that would echo through the centuries: Negusa Nagast, the King of Kings. Ezana knew that blood eventually washes away. To stay powerful, he needed a unifying vision. This is where he turned to his tutor, a youth from Tyre named Frumentius. Ezana told him,
"The Romans look at our gold and see a merchant. They look at our army and see a threat, but they do not see an equal."
Frumentius replied,
"Rome has found a new language, my king. Speak it, and the gates of the Mediterranean will be handed to you."
"You asked me to abandon the ancestors."
The advisor's response was simple, but revolutionary.
"I ask you to lead your people into the future. Do not just trade with the world, Ezana. Rule its spirit."
Ezana's conversion was a masterstroke of diplomacy, but it was also a reclamation of an ancient identity. Long before Ezana, the Bible spoke of this land and the Queen of Sheba, Makeda. As Solomon said, "The Queen of the South shall rise up, for she came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon." Ezana was tapping into this bloodline, claiming a spiritual inheritance that stretched back 1,000 years. He was completing a journey started by the Ethiopian eunuch in the Book of Acts, the high-ranking treasury official who brought the first seeds of the gospel back to the palace of Aksum. When the eunuch asked, "How can I understand unless someone guides me?" Ezana became that guide for the entire nation. This was the birth of Orthodox Tewahedo, an African-centered faith that predates most European churches. He gave his people a spiritual armor, a Bible with 81 books. Because of Ezana, Aksum became the vault of the world, preserving the Book of Enoch and other sacred texts that the rest of the world discarded, but Aksum kept sacred. To show the world his power was permanent, Ezana built the Stelae of Aksum. These weren't just monuments, they were an engineering miracle. Experts note that Ezana's largest pillars weighed over 160 tons. To put that in perspective, imagine a Boeing 747 standing on its tail. Carved from single blocks of solid granite, these massive monoliths were architectural propaganda. They were designed to look like multi-story skyscrapers, featuring intricate windows and even door handles etched directly into the rock. This was a message to the world. The Aksumites didn't just build on the earth, they reshaped the world at will. But these monuments were also a warning. Inscribed on them were curse formulae, a terrifying promise that anyone who challenged his throne would have their name rooted up and extirpated from the land of the living. He also built monumental basilicas to serve his new administrative elite. The Ezana Stele still stands today, a 1,700-year-old testament in stone. Ezana didn't just build a kingdom, he founded the precursor to modern Ethiopia. Because he built such a strong, unified identity centered on the Solomonid line and the church, his nation became an unbreakable fortress. Rome fell. The Dark Ages swept Europe. But the foundation Ezana laid remained unshaken for 1,600 years. This is the secret to why, during the 19th century scramble for Africa, Ethiopia stood alone, defiant, unconquered, the only nation in Africa to never fall to a foreign power. At the Battle of Adwa, the descendants of Ezana's army preserved their sovereignty against a modern European force. But centuries later, the capital shifted to Roha, where a new dynasty arose. A king who didn't build upward, but carved 11 entire cathedrals downward, straight into the belly of the earth. That is the story of King Lalibela. Subscribe so you don't miss the story of the New Jerusalem in Africa.